Dozens of state violations fill the files of a Rockford daycare. Its owners call them accusations and lies, but say that doesn't matter. They have their eyes set on a major purchase on the city's west side.
Yeah, a months-long investigation uncovers an extensive list of violations at the House of Grace Learning Center and Daycare. WIFR's Nathaniel Langley joins us with the exclusive details as the center's owners push back against the complaints.
Daniel, Sydney, pastors Melvin and Sheila Brown signed papers to purchase Mercyhealth's former hospital on the city's west side. They claim the daycare issues are not true, and their history of community service speaks to their ability to take on a major project benefiting the Rockford region.
Everybody should be in on supporting this.
Pastors Melvin and Sheila Brown from Kingdom Authority International say they've heard the skeptics.
It's a black organization that's got it, and they don't have the understanding how to bring it about.
But they're moving forward anyway with the $1 purchase of the former Mercyhealth Hospital on Rockford's west side. The incoming owners say they're ready for a challenge.
Instead of there being so much negative energy, I'm hoping that it begins to turn and become positive.
Before the Brown family branched into purchasing a hospital, they say their community service started here at the House of Grace Learning and Daycare Center.
I've been taking care of children for 35 years, and I've been like a mother to thousands of, people.
The Kingdom Authority pastors and daycare operators stand on their history.
We have a very good track record.
But records from the Illinois Department of Children and Family Services show that history may be muddied.
My response is no comment.
The no comment didn't last long.
I've been a source of help to so many families down there.
Records uncover a list of 88 substantiated complaints and licensing violations at House of Grace since 2020.
We have no violations.
Staff findings include a lack of attendance keeping and background checks, as well as sanitary issues and 3 violations for not employing a qualified child care director.
We've hurt no one. We wronged no one.
The Browns flip responsibility to DCFS.
And I'm not the only person who have issues with licensing reps.
DCFS responded saying it issued House of Grace a daycare center license in 2000. That license remains active as long as the facility meets state standards. But DCFS says the violations weren't lies. Investigations verified all 88 complaints.
I believe God shuts one door because he has a greater door that he's taken us through.
Pastor Brown expects more pressure as the family's focus turns to the hospital.
I'm sure before this deal's over with, we might have 300 violations before this one's over with to stop us from doing what commission that God has given us.
The daycare operators claim House of Grace will not move into the former hospital, and they shrug off concerns some may have as they take on the 700,000 square foot building and project.
What did we do? All we did is let's take it.
I've got questions. Is it some racial undertone issues going on? As far as me and my husband, we have did nothing.
House of Grace is called the House of Grace Christian Learning Center and Daycare. Illinois exempts some of these facilities to be licensed if they're religious or connected to a church. I reached out to Mercyhealth also for comment, but was told no one was available to respond today.
DCFS adds it takes the responsibility seriously to ensure the safety and well-being of children in licensed care. As for the hospital, it'll be open for community feedback in a town hall at noon November 1st inside the building.